Welcome to Label Reading 101. Now I know that sometimes nutrition information can be a little bit overwhelming and it can be tempting to just look at the claims on the front of the package and trust those to tell you what is healthy and what is good for you. But unfortunately, what's on the front of the package is marketing claims. And the bottom line is, if you care about your health and you care about what you're putting into your body, you just have to turn the package over and look at that ingredient list in the tiny, tiny print. And in some cases, what you find on that list may shock you. In this video, I'm going to set down some principles for what to look for on those ingredient lists and a few things to avoid. Now, these principles can apply broadly to any item that you would buy in a store, but for this video I'm going to focus specifically on bread products because I'm making this at the beginning of my 21-day fix challenge group, and in the 21-day fix eating plan, that tends to be one of the things that sometimes confuses people. What is a whole grain cracker? There are so many kinds of bread in the bread aisle, how do I even begin to decide? So we'll take a look at 5 categories of bread products: bagels, bread, pita bread, crackers, and waffles. We'll start with bagels, and I just want you to keep in mind that the brands I'm featuring in this video are not necessarily the best or the worst. They're just examples of items that I would buy and items that I would not buy. So for every item I would buy, there are dozens of examples that are similar that I would also buy, and every item I show in this video that I say I wouldn't buy or wouldn't recommend, it's not the worst of the worst. There are others that are out there just as bad. So you've really got to look at the labels, but I'm going to try to outline some overarching principles for you. Here we go. Now, with all of these products, the first thing that we want to look for on the ingredient list is a whole grain, and that is lacking on the list for these bagels. You see the first ingredient, unbleached, enriched wheat flour, that is white flour. If it said whole wheat flour, that's a whole grain. If it just says wheat flour, it is refined, highly refined, and much of the fiber and protein and vitamin content has been stripped. So let's discard these bagels and see if we can find something healthier. Now, when you look at this label, once again, whole wheat flour is not the first ingredient. That enriched high gluten flour is refined white flour. If you keep going down the ingredient list, you see that whole wheat flour is at least an ingredient in these bagels, and so I would deem them a healthier choice, although they're still not ideal. But these are the ones that I bought to use with the 21-day fix. Let's move on to bread. As you can see, this is the Market Pantry brand sold at Target, and you can see that on the front of the package it says wheat bread. Let's turn it over and look at the back. Now, remember, on the front of the package it said wheat bread, but it didn't say whole wheat bread, and that reflects what we're seeing. Whole wheat flour is not the first ingredient, although it is in the ingredient list. I also want you to pay attention to the sheer length of this ingredient list. There are so many ingredients here, and many that I can't even pronounce, and I don't know what they are. So a general principle is keep things as basic as you can. If you're comparing 2 products and one of them has a longer ingredient list and more ingredients that are unfamiliar, then in general you should choose the product with the simpler ingredient list. Let's take a look at this Touch of Honey whole wheat bread, which is the store brand from Whole Foods. Now, here you see whole wheat flour, and it's even organic as the first ingredient, and you can also see that this list of ingredients is much shorter. So another thing that I'm noticing is there's no high fructose corn syrup, which is a great sign. That's a very highly processed sweetener with little nutritional value. The organic evaporated cane juice that you see here is less processed, it's closer to nature, and all of these ingredients are things that I can pronounce and I know what they are. Now, I actually don't have an unhealthy example when it comes to pita bread, but here is the example of the pita bread that I bought to use with the 21-day fix program. And looking at this ingredient list, I just want to point out how very, very simple it is. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 ingredients, and that's it. And all of those ingredients are things that I recognize that I might have in my own kitchen. So I know that some people are gluten intolerant, and that's a completely different issue. But for those who can eat gluten, in terms of a bread product, this is pretty much ideal in my book. Moving on to crackers. Now, it made me really sad to see what was on the ingredient list of everyone's favorite, the Ritz cracker, right? They're buttery, they're fluffy, they're delicious, but look at these harmful ingredients. Now, we don't have a whole grain flour, and I think Ritz does make a whole wheat version, but that's really beside the point, because what we're seeing here is partially hydrogenated cottonseed oil. Cotton is one of the most heavily treated crops in terms of pesticides, so you'll notice this is not organic. And in addition to that, it's a hydrogenated oil, so it's chemically engineered to have a higher melting point so that it stays solid. Picture a container of Crisco, but this process involves heavy metals that leach into the oil, and in addition to that, the chemical composition, it creates a molecule that is primed for clogging your blood vessels. So this is a major contributor to heart disease. Hydrogenated oils are not something you want to be putting into your body under any circumstances. Let's take a look at these organic wheat square crackers from the Whole Foods store brand. Now I'm liking what I see here. Organic whole wheat flour. Very first ingredient, it's a whole grain. It's not contributing to your toxic load in your body with pesticides. It's a shorter ingredient list, and it doesn't contain any long chemicals with weird unpronounceable names. There we go. Here we have our whole grain crackers for the program. And now on to our last product category, waffles. The 21-day fix allows whole grain waffles, but what exactly constitutes a whole grain waffle? I hate to break it to you, but an Eggo waffle is not a whole grain waffle. Looking at this ingredient list, we once again see enriched flour, but it's not whole wheat flour, it's not a whole grain. Now, that being said, it isn't a whole grain waffle, but just purely based on the ingredient list, this isn't a terrible choice. I do want to point out it contains soybean or canola oil, and neither of those, in my opinion, is a great choice. Those are high in omega-6 fatty acids that don't have the anti-inflammatory properties of omega-3s, and in my opinion are not as good for us either as saturated fats, and I'm not going to go into why here, but soybeans are very cheap. They're normally genetically modified. Canola, there are some issues with processing, and these are oils I try to avoid when I can. This is the waffle brand I chose to buy and am currently enjoying. Now we see on the front of the package it contains 8 whole grains. Let's turn it over and see if those whole grains are at the top of the ingredient list or if it's a marketing ploy. It turns out that they are at the top of the ingredient list. The 8 whole grains mix is the first ingredient. It actually is whole wheat and whole grains all the way down. This is a great choice. We see the canola oil at least is non-GMO. And there aren't any unpronounceable ingredients. Bravo! I hope you've enjoyed this brief introduction to what you should be looking for when you read labels, and I hope it's been useful for you. If you have questions, or if you want to learn more about working with me, visit me at livingvibrantly.net or connect with me on Facebook. Thanks for watching.